Asif Ali Zardari wins a sweeping victory in Pakistan's presidential elections. Is it a victory for democracy or a return to one-man rule? Is Zardari the right man to lead Pakistan in such turbulent times? Can he, with a tarnished past, turn a new page and prove he is truly a statesman? This is Inside Story. Hello, I'm Mariam Namazi. After 9 years under Pervez Musharraf, Pakistan has a new president. Asif Ali Zardari will be sworn in on Tuesday. He's shown impressive skill in forging a large coalition and using it to peacefully unseat President Musharraf. But many fear Pakistan is returning to the old-style politics of confrontation at a time when the country faces great challenges. Mike Hanna reports.
Two items dominate the headlines: the sweeping election victory of Asif Ali Zardari and the bomb attack near Peshawar that claimed dozens of lives. The outlawed Pakistan Taliban claimed responsibility, and this the most pressing problem facing President Zardari. It is a domestic issue, and one that demands that the new leader forge a united approach by divided political parties. Overnight fireworks filled the sky, and for a few hours there was a degree of national unity, in which even those opposed to Zardari, the politician, congratulated him on becoming Pakistan's 13th head of state and the first civilian elected to the post in the 21st century. His first words as president encouraged those who hoped that the process of rebuilding parliamentary democracy is underway.
I reiterate, Parliament is sovereign. This president shall be subservient to the parliament. And I would like history to remember that the weak democracy has managed to take a two-third majority and make a president with a two-third majority, whereas a dictator in uniform could not perform. So democracy talks and everybody hears.
The question, though, whether these words will be put into practice, whether the new leader works to amend a constitution that at present gives the president sweeping powers at the expense of the people's elected representatives. Another question being pondered by the president is how to elicit the support of a military that has been all-powerful in the past. The position of civilian leaders in Pakistan has been tenuous, to say the least. And the ultimate challenge facing Asif Ali Zardari is how to secure agreement between the politicians and the soldiers as to what constitutes the national interest. Mike Hanna for Inside Story, Islamabad.
So let's take a closer look at Asif Ali Zardari. He's a man who spent 11 years in jail over a long list of charges, ranging from corruption to attempted murder. A man better known as Mr. 10%. But there's more to his history. Well, Zardari is 52 years old. He hails from a wealthy family in Sindh province. His accidental venture into politics started when he married Benazir Bhutto in 1987. After his release from prison in 2004, Zardari left Pakistan and kept a low profile, only to return in December 2007 when his wife was assassinated. In fact, this propelled him onto the international and domestic stage. Despite his inexperience, he's proved a shrewd political player. Following Bhutto's death, he installed his son Bilal as the party's head and made himself the deputy. He then joined forces with Nawaz Sharif in a coalition government to oust Pervez Musharraf. A week later, the alliance collapsed. He then ran for the presidency himself, gaining a little more than two-thirds majority needed to win. Well, joining us now are our guests. In Dubai, we have Javed Malik. He's Pakistan's ambassador to the Middle East and Europe. In London, Robert Evans, he's chairman of the European Parliament's delegation for relations with South Asia. And in Islamabad, political analyst Ahmed Qureshi. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. Mr. Malik, if I can start with you, is Zardari's election a victory for democracy in Pakistan?
It is indeed. It is the only thing that you can say about that, because he has not only secured victory from his own party, rather the votes from his own party, but the entire political dispensation in the country has voted for him, except with the exception of the PML. And if you look at the tally of the votes, you would find that the entire political parties have rallied behind him. And as you rightly said in your own assessment there, that he has very successfully been able to carry on the agenda of reconciliation, which was started by, of course, Shaheed Mohtarma Benazir Bhutto in her book, where she talked about bringing all the political forces together. So he has been very successful in bringing reconciliation, and that has been the claim to his success, because people in Pakistan greatly need reconciliation. They do not need any more confrontation. That is exactly what President-elect Zardari stands for. Okay,
Mr. Qureshi in Islamabad, do you agree with that? The fact that parliamentarians have elected Zardari for the country's top position, is that a victory for democracy?
Mr. Zardari's election and his becoming the president, though fair and square, is probably the lowest point for a failed political system that is being put to the test again. Now, of course, he played his game fair and square. He is the duly elected president of our country, no doubt, no questions about that. But there are other issues. The very fact that this political system never produces the kind of leadership that this country deserves. Mr. Zardari, of course, has a checkered past, a lot of question marks on his past, unanswered questions, and of course there's the very important question of the deal that was brokered by Washington and London with a fading and defeated president, former President Musharraf, through which this current dispensation came to power. Let's not forget that Mr. Zardari would have never become Pakistan's president, regardless of the number of seats or the result that his party would have fared in the election, if not for that deal, which resulted in cleaning his legal record. So this is probably the lowest form for a failed political system, but he deserves the benefit of the doubt. As a newcomer, he deserves to be given his chance, and we need to see whether this time, finally, this failed political system and our politicians finally can bring stability to this country, which, frankly, they have been unsuccessful at for the past 30, 40 years.
Okay, Robert Evans, if I can bring you in at this point. Some analysts are predicting that the fight between Sharif and Zardari is about to get extremely vicious now that Musharraf is out of the equation, that they are now going to focus on eliminating each other. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think it's going to be a very difficult situation for Zardari and for Pakistan, but we shouldn't get over the fact that he's surprised people already. He's, you know, a year ago, nobody would have predicted that he would have been in this position at all, because we know what's happened, the Musharraf going, the death of Benazir Bhutto, and the elections, the peaceful elections earlier this year, and then the peaceful, if you like, departure of Musharraf. So let's not underestimate Zardari. Has surprised people all along. He's got a very difficult task, and if he can work with somehow or not work against Nawaz Sharif, well, it's possible that the country will be able to move forward. But I think a lot depends on not just Zardari himself, but it also depends on how Nawaz Sharif decides to play it, whether he decides to cooperate or whether he decides to be obstructionist or whether he just decides to be neutral. So it's a lot to play for in the next few months ahead.
Mr. Qureshi, can Sharif and Zardari coexist peacefully? Is Islamabad big enough for the two of them?
Well, unfortunately, Pakistani politics and Pakistani politicians and political parties never mature to become institutions. Political parties usually produce leadership, are incubators for leadership in other countries. In Pakistan, they are mostly family-run businesses. And when you have a competition between two political parties in Pakistan, it normally comes down to a clash of egos between two families or two heads of two families. And this is exactly what we are seeing right now. As your guest in London indicated, of course, Mr. Zardari did, of course, surprise many Pakistanis with the way he managed his affairs in the past 12 months. But even if Mr. Zardari decides to introduce, for example, a new line of thinking in Pakistani politics, I fail to see how the rest of the politicians, the other politicians, would play along with him and will not try to bring him down using all the legal and illegal means that we've seen happen before in Pakistani politics. So I don't know. For me, a sense of pessimism or sense of optimism really is really not does not go very far in this case.
Mr. Malik, I suppose key to the question of the relationship between Sharif and Zardari is whether or not Zardari is willing to reverse changes made to the country's constitution under Pervez Musharraf when he was president. Is Zardari willing to essentially give the power back to the people?
Well, certainly, because he represents a party that is the People's Party. It was set up by Asif Ali Bhutto, who first of all gave the people the right to exert their own influence in a democratic system. I fail to understand what my friend in Islamabad is talking about, a failed democratic system or a failed political system. This is how democracy works. People go for elections, they elect their leaders, and whoever gets the mandate comes to govern. That's exactly how it happens everywhere in the world. And that is what has happened in Pakistan. The large majority of the people, or the analysts, in fact, and independent observers from Europe and America were there during the last elections, and they witnessed them, and they largely regarded them as very fair and impartial. There have been a few incidents, this is of course Pakistan, but largely they were fair. And this process, or rather this assembly that we see, not just in the central of in Islamabad, but also in the provinces, is a result of that election. So that is how elections take place.
Is Zardari willing to reverse those changes made to the constitution? But I mean, you say that he's willing to do so, but he's already failed to live up to his word.
Well, I'm not quite sure how you can say he has failed to live up to his word, because he has
brought about the national consensus. That was why the coalition with Sharif collapsed.
Well, the coalition did not collapse because he failed on his word. It's basically an issue of judiciary. They had a difference of opinion in how the judiciary can be restored. But you must also remember that whilst Mr. Nawaz Sharif did not agree with the point of view of Mr. Zardari, a number of other parties, the MQM, the JUI, the ANP, the Independents and the FATA, have agreed. The vote count very clearly indicates that the people have voted for Mr. Zardari, agree with his policies. He has all along maintained, and so has his party, that they will be restoring the judges. In fact, some of the judges have already taken oath. So that issue that you talk about, the collapse, has only happened on one issue, which was the judiciary.
Right, well, it's time for a short break now, but when we return, we'll take a closer look at the challenges facing Pakistan's new president. Stay with us.